Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce online webinar. We'll be hearing about keeping up with the changing digital landscape. My name is James Lloyd-Smith, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager of Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, and I am delighted to have Russell Welch with us today, the Head of Search at Clear Design Agency. Before I hand over to Russell, I'd just like to outline some of the support that Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce are delivering at this time. So what are we? What do we do? We are essentially a non-for-profit business and membership organisation who have been around since 1813. Our aim is to connect, support and grow local businesses all over Greater Birmingham. And we help businesses with absolutely everything, from marketing to sourcing customers locally, to even getting started and expanding globally. Throughout the coronavirus pandemic, of course, there's been huge change and disruption, but the Chamber have developed a wide variety of resources to keep business moving. From our coronavirus hub to the latest government policy, of which there's been a fair few announcements and changes, we are here to support you and go through the latest government policy and basically get you returned to normality in the best way possible. I'm really excited about this webinar as it's really topical for all businesses and kind of the changing from physical to digital landscape has been such like a big thing in the last few months. As the Chamber, we have developed a number of resources virtually from our, for example, our GB Chamber chats, which can be found on Twitter every day, to member blogs and webinars just like this one, which have all been made available for you to watch online. If you'd like to see this information or find out a little more, then head over to www.Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce for all this information. So right now, I'm going to hand over to Russell, and we'll get started. Oh, sorry, quickly before that, just about our upcoming events. On Friday, the 3rd of July, we've got a virtual networking event. Monday the 6th of July, we've got a yoga with Lure Beach. Tuesday the 7th of July, making the most of your chamber membership. And Friday the 9th of July, driving responsible business, which is part of the Aston Business School Leadership Essentials series. So now I'm going to hand over to Russell and we'll get this webinar started. So thank you very much. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please put all questions in the chat and we'll get back to those whilst Russell has finished his presentation. Thank you very much.
Cool, thanks James. Yeah, so as James has just said, I'm Russell. I'm from a company called Clear. We've got offices in Shrewsbury and Birmingham, and I'm head of search, which basically means I'm in charge of all the digital marketing stuff that we do as a company. I've got a really quick intro to who we are and what we do, but I know you're not here for that. You're here for the proper content of the talk. So I'm going to make that bit pretty brief and then we'll get started. The actual talk itself, I've tried to hit on as many different bits of digital marketing as we can, but obviously we don't have hours and hours today. So I've tried to touch on what I think are the most important parts that people should be thinking about right now across a number of different channels. And also the tone of your marketing at the minute is probably more important than it's ever been. So I'll talk about that a bit as well. As I say, I'm from Clear. We're a creative agency. We've been around quite a while. We've got quite a big team. I started there myself 4 years ago, something like that. And it was just me doing the digital marketing at that time. Now the digital marketing is 5 people. So we're growing all the time in that respect. As you can see, there's quite a few people. We do everything in-house as well. So that works really well because we don't have to farm anything out to anyone. We've worked with some clients you may have heard of. The NHS we did some recruitment campaigns for, which were really good. There's things like Chewy Group, Ariva, and some smaller clients as well. We do a lot of retail, e-commerce stuff like with Pockets, who are a menswear retailer. And also Opro mouthguards is quite a big one. If you're into rugby, you might have heard of them. And we do a full range of services. So everything from print design and web design through to hosting and that sort of technical side of websites, and also all the digital marketing. So my department does mainly Google Ads and SEO, but we also do Bing Ads, paid social media, email marketing. You name it, we do it basically. And also we've got lots of awards and accreditations to back up what we do. That's it about the company. That bit's over. So the first thing I want to talk about is tone of voice. And I did a talk similar to this a few months ago when lockdown first started. And I was talking mainly about coronavirus then. Things have moved on a bit, but we'll come to that in a second. So first of all, I've got a little poll for you. So you may or may not have seen these Chinese symbols, but most people have heard the phrase, crisis is danger plus opportunity, is the phrase you may have heard. I just want to see if people agree with that. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just your opinion. So you should see the poll on the screen. So if you could just tick the box, yes, no, or not sure, and then we'll see what everyone thinks. Cool. Okay, that's probably enough. I reckon. So yeah, most people are saying yes. So 65% think yes, and then we've got some people who don't think so or not sure. Yeah. So if we go back to the slides, it was kind of a trick question. So sorry about that. So technically, if you look at the Chinese characters, it doesn't quite mean that, and it's kind of a misconception. The first character there is danger, but the second one means more like critical point or something than it does opportunity. But I think as a phrase, as something we can use as a maxim in business and stuff, yeah, I mean, I think the coronavirus situation, and now there's some other political stuff going on that I'll talk about in a minute. The tone of your communications is really, really important. And if you get it wrong and you put out the wrong messaging, then it can be quite harmful to your brand at the minute. So there are a couple of examples I want to look at on that side of things. So first of all, this is an article. It was back in March actually, but I think they could have brought this out now. It's still just as relevant, to be honest. Vogue put out an article on their site about ladies' pajamas to wear while working from home. And we've got one more poll just to get us going. So this article about gorgeous pairs of ladies' pajamas to wear while working from home, do you think that is an appropriate bit of marketing for Vogue to have put out in March when coronavirus was just kicking off? See what you think. Again, no right or wrong answers, no judgment. It's purely your point of view. Okay, that's probably good, I think. Let's see what people thought. So, it's much more split. This is interesting. So yeah, I've done this, as I said, I've done a similar talk before, and it's interesting that it is so split. And that's kind of the point I want to make, is that you might put out some marketing internally in your company. You think, yeah, this is great, this is cool. But then your audience could react to it differently. And I think at the minute, there's a real danger of coming across a bit disingenuous with your marketing or trying to profit from a crisis, that sort of thing. So that's why we need to be so careful with everything right now. Obviously, as well as coronavirus, we've now got a lot of stuff around Black Lives Matters going on. A lot of companies are putting out marketing around that as well. So I've put an example here from Yorkshire Tea. Someone tweeted at them and said, oh, I'm so glad you haven't supported Black Lives Matters. And then they tweeted back to say, don't buy our tea. I think it's the first marketing I've ever seen that told someone not to buy their products. But it was super, super popular. They're getting across their point of view on a political issue. Obviously, racism is bad. So they're showing their solidarity there. And yeah, they may lose some customers over it. But again, they're maybe picking up some customers because people know this brand is aligned with their views. However, there was also a bit of backlash for Yorkshire tea, because the tea industry has a background which includes stuff like slavery, which obviously sort of runs contrary to what they're saying. And some other companies have done some stuff as well around Black Lives Matters, and then have been asked questions about how many of your board members are black or ethnic minority, for example, and they weren't able to answer that, or the answer is they're all white. So yeah, obviously you have to be a little bit careful. Things have got very political this year. I think it's great that companies are getting their views out there, but it has to be done in a careful way, and you have to think about your tone. I'm just going to give one other example on Black Lives Matters, which is Ben and Jerry's. I think these guys have handled it the right way, but they've only been able to handle it in this way because they've been talking about this issue for years already. So they've gone with a very strong stance. This is a very striking image with a very strong message on it. I think if another company had done this, they probably wouldn't have got away with it. But Ben and Jerry's, on their site, they have a issues that are important to us section. They're very into political stuff and the environment and all that sort of thing. So it fits with their brand, basically. Whereas if your company doesn't talk about that stuff very much, and you suddenly come out with this really strong message, and it looks like you're just doing it to get publicity, then that could look disingenuous. So it's just balancing all those things at the minute is a bit tricky. So that's one thing to think about. Also, in the past, you always had the option not to mention these things, just not to comment. But around Black Lives Matters, there's been a lot of pressure on businesses to put out a statement, which makes it even more difficult because you have to think about how that's going to be worded. Also at the minute, going back to coronavirus, a lot of companies have had to rethink their campaigns completely. So earlier this year, KFC had a finger licking good thing, and their ad was a video and it showed loads of people licking their fingers. Obviously right now that's not so appropriate. So you might want to think about your marketing. Have you got loads of imagery of people shaking hands or people in big groups and stuff like that? You might want to rethink that imagery. If your wording is focused around collaboration and groups and stuff like that, that might need to be worded in a certain way now that makes sense for the time. So that's something else to think about. Also, we had clients pause their campaigns for a while on, say, Google Ads because they suddenly weren't getting the same results. I'll come back to that a bit later. Now things are starting to ease. You might be wanting to start running those campaigns again and getting them back up and running. In terms of pausing and reducing spend, this graphic is, I think this is from March as well. Marketing Week and eConsultancy put out some data showing that most people have reduced or delayed marketing over the last few months. So that's something you need to think about. But the other thing is there's some types of marketing you can do which are free, or as free as they can be, because obviously they cost time. But if you are less busy at the moment, there's some things I've got that I think you should look at, and I'll be coming back to those throughout the talk. Sort of actionable things you can do. So to summarize this first section, yeah, don't go silent. Don't be too scared to say anything to your audience or do any marketing. And don't feel guilty because you still need to earn a living. But just be conscious of how you come across. Try and stick within your regular tone of voice. Some of the best marketing I've seen recently doesn't mention coronavirus, even though it's clearly linked to it in some way. So this New Yorker example here, from a little bit earlier in the year, it says a trusted source in uncertain times on it. You know it's about coronavirus, but it doesn't actively mention it. Just as an aside, though, I've seen the phrase uncertain times about 20 billion times. So another thing to do is just make sure that your message is slightly different from everyone else's message, because not so much now, but certainly a couple of months ago, I was getting a lot of emails from companies I hadn't dealt with for ages saying the same thing. So you just got to make sure that you keep it personal and you try and say something a little bit different, so you can stand out in people's inbox or however they're coming across you. So the rest of the talk, I want to talk about different channels that you can use for your marketing. I'm going to go through these pretty quick, just with a few key points on each, because obviously there's a lot of stuff here. I'm not actually going to talk about print, because the talk's mainly about digital stuff anyway. And also, it's a bit difficult, especially if you're business to business. Where do you send the print marketing anymore? Are people even in the office? So I'm going to focus on the digital stuff mainly, and just talk very briefly about bricks and mortar. And I've tried to make it so whether you're B2C or B2B, you can still get something out of the talk. So let's start with bricks and mortar. So if you have got a shop or something, or even an office to some extent, a key theme is you've got to communicate with your audience, and you've got to do that on every one of your channels, every one of your platforms. So this is a message I'll be coming back to. In your store or outside your store or both, obviously you need to communicate with people about what your health and safety measures are. You need to reassure people that you're doing everything right and that it's safe to shop, which is nothing you would have ever had to do before. Also on that messaging, especially if your opening hours are different, or if you've had to close at various points, if there's a second wave or something, we may end up closing again. I mean, who knows? So making sure you've got links to your presence online on your stuff that's outside your shop is really important at the moment, just to give people alternative avenues. I mean, even if your shop is open, someone might prefer to go online next time rather than go physically to the shop because they might feel that's safer. Also, make sure you're talking about your alternative services you're offering. Opening times might have changed, make sure that's updated. And also I've put this example of some rainbows on just because it's very easy to have lots of negative messages or things that are boring, like about your health and safety. So I think it could be fun if you could try and brighten things up as well. One thing I try and avoid definitely is I've seen lots of shops with loads and loads and loads of A4 printouts of signs all over their shop front. And it's just overwhelming. There's too much stuff for people to read and take in. So try and really simplify what you really, really need to say and try and get it in just one or two places, just so it's easy to take in, basically. That's all I'm going to say about physical shops for now. Probably the most important part at the moment for a lot of people, if you've got one, is your website. And again, a lot of the stuff that I've just been talking about, you need to tell your audience about on your physical shop. You also need to do the same thing on your website. There's two main ways to do this. So some of our clients have put up a banner on their homepage, for example, which tells them about what's happening with their current situation with coronavirus. Some people had to say they were closed or they couldn't get stock for a while, so that message went up, or they'd furloughed people or whatever. Now the message might be, oh, we're back open again. So a banner on the homepage is one way to do that. Another way is to do a pop-up, which appears the first time someone's on your site, but then once they've closed it, they don't see that again until you change the message on the pop-up and you reset it. That can be better in some ways because a homepage banner is obviously only on the homepage, and if they arrive on another page on the site, then you may end up not seeing the message, basically. So that's one thing. There are pros and cons. Some people don't like pop-ups, so that could be a downside, especially if you've got a big pop-up for your cookie message as well. But there you go. So getting that across is important. Also, you've probably got pages on your site like your contact page or something, or you might have stores pages if you've got more than one store or location. Make sure all the info on there is up to date. Is this Tesco? I think it is. Can't remember now. But they've got a good example of they've updated all their opening hours and stuff on the site. Also, something we did at Clear, a lot of us aren't working in the office right now, so we've put a notice on to say we'd prefer you to email rather than call right now because there aren't many people on the phones. So that's something you can do as well. And as I was saying at the start, you may have a bit more time on your hands at the minute. You may not. You might have done for the last couple of months, and now things are ramping up again. So it's going to be a different situation for everyone. But if you do have some extra time, now's a good time to revisit your page content on your website and just make sure everything's up to date. Does it read well? Is it broken up into short sentences, short paragraphs that make it easy to read on the web? All stuff like that. You can just tidy things up and make sure it's all relevant. And also, if you haven't got much content on some pages, you might want to make it longer, which is often a bad thing to do for SEO as well. As well as your page content, you can work on your blog, your case studies, any of that supportive content. And the good thing about having blog content is it tends not to be as sales focused as the rest of your site. It can be a bit more personal, yeah, so you can basically do the soft sell approach, and then you can use that information and get it out on your social media, so it gives you something to post on your social media as well. That's not just sell, 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 or coronavirus updates. This is a nice example from a jewelers we work with in Shrewsbury, and they have some quite nice articles, like how to care for your jewelry, for example, is not directly selling, it's providing useful information that your audience will be interested in. And there's nothing worse than a site where you go to their blog and the blogs are dated and they're like months and months ago or years ago. I've seen that before in some cases. So just something to think about. Something else online. So you may or may not have a website. That's probably your first priority if you do have one. However, there's lots of other online presence you can have. Google My Business is one of those things. You may or may not have heard of it. You've probably seen it before in the search results. If you're not signed up for this, really recommend it. It doesn't take that much time to set it up. So you just type in Google My Business into Google. If you've got a Google account, you use that to sign in and manage it. What it does is basically you put in information about your business and your location, and then it feeds that information into various things. So there's something called the knowledge graph on the Google search results, which comes up on the right hand side. So the Shrewsbury bid example on the right is an example of that. Again, this has your opening hours, it has your phone number, your contact details, you can put your pin on a map, you can add images of your business to it, things like that. So it's just another way of, if someone does search for your it does a local search, say they're looking for a clothing store in Birmingham city centre, and that's you, it gives you another opportunity to come up in the search results. And also you might see this kind of map situation that I've got on the left here. Again, that comes up in a box in the search results when someone does a local search. If you don't have Google My Business, you may come up in there, but you're a lot less likely to, essentially. And the other thing that it feeds into is Google Maps. So if someone's using Google Maps on their phone or on the desktop, then again, it feeds into that. And you can also link it up with your Google Ads, what's called a location extension can show up on your ads as well to show people who are close to you that you are close to them. It shows your address, which can be quite nice as well. So that's that. Social media, again, it's another presence you have online. Can be really important. It's more important for some businesses than others. As a general rule, I would say B2C companies are going to make more use of it, and especially if you've got a very visual product, so jewelry, clothing, anything like that that looks nice. We've got Merry Thought Teddy Bears on here, who's one of our clients. Obviously, they make good use of it because they've got a very visual product as well. But it can also work really well B2B. Not so much organically, but when we get on to talking about paid advertising in a minute, Facebook, for example, works pretty well for B2B businesses as well. Yeah, so this communication message is back. All the updates you've put on your website and that you've put on the front of your shop, if you've got one, again, you need to make sure that's reflected in your social media. On a lot of platforms like Twitter and Facebook, you can do a pinned post on your page and that will appear at the top. So you might want your latest information on coronavirus at the top, or your latest information about whether you're open or not at the top, so people can get that straight away. Again, it's got your opening hours and contact details and images and all that stuff, so keep that updated. One thing Goldsmiths did, the jewelry client I spoke about, they've done a video showing what procedures are in place. So it shows them walking around the shop. It shows that everything is behind plastic screens and they slide the jewelry out to you with gloves on, and you wear gloves to look at and try on the jewelry, and they've explained how they've got this cleanliness process. If it touches skin, then it has to, like, 72 hours off of the shop floor and all that stuff. So it's just that reassurance, and people know what to expect. There's a lot of I think a lot of people might be put off from even going to places at the minute because there's that anxiety around, oh, I don't know what it's going to be like now. Is it going to be really awkward or difficult to try things on and stuff like that? So that sort of reassurance is really useful at the moment, I think. This is another example I really liked, and it's a great example of how, even though there's a lot going on in the world at the minute, we can still have a bit of a laugh. But it has to be done in a very careful way. Sarcasm can be very dangerous online because it can be read the wrong way, for example. This is a really cool one. This is the Cowboy Museum. Can't remember what state it's in, but it's in the United States. Obviously, they've had a lockdown and their social media person was furloughed. So the guy doing the social media was their security guard for a bit. His name is Tim. So his first post is introducing himself and like, yeah, I'm Tim. He's got a great hat. But it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that Tim does not know how to use social media, or at least he's pretending not to. I'm not sure which it is, but it gets pretty funny. So someone asked him to post a TikTok, so he puts a picture of a clock from their collection up. He uses hashtags wrong, just all this stuff. Which I just thought it was funny. But he's also posting loads of pictures of the collection, so he's also promoting the business. And because he was kind of clueless, that got a lot of publicity. Now, I don't know whether that was the intention or it just happened that way or whatever, but I thought it was really good. So if your tone of voice, you're a company that uses humor, still use it. Yeah, great. Just be careful it's not at anyone's expense, apart from maybe yourself, which is what this one does. So in terms of what to post on social at the minute, it relates to what I was saying before. Opening times, health and safety procedures, reassurances, linking to your blog content, or if you've got new case studies. If you've got new products and stuff, you can link to those as well. Some people have done some offers and discounts at the moment. Things are a bit flat, so they've put some offers in to try and boost things a little bit. Obviously, you can promote those on social media. If you're offering a completely different service, so you're a restaurant, for example, and you started doing food deliveries or boxes and stuff like that to people that you wouldn't normally do, obviously advertise that. And people like to see you helping as well. I think that's really good right now, is to be seen to be a helper. You're helping your local community. as long as it doesn't look like you're only doing it to look good. So there's a line there as well, which goes back to the tone of voice. And try and spread some joy, spread some love. That's always good. One other thing on social media, there's this thing called Facebook Shops, which allows you to list products. So if you don't have a website at the minute, you could theoretically use Facebook Shops instead. Upload your products onto that. And they're introducing a way where you can buy directly on Facebook now, which they're rolling out. I think it's going to be rolled out properly next month, maybe by August, but they're starting to roll it out now. And obviously, a lot of people are shopping online rather than going out right now. And if you don't have e-commerce, but you have products that you could sell online if you wanted to, that might be something to look at. I've got some other examples of platforms you can use if you don't have a website later on in the talk as well. Obviously, if you don't have social media, you can't do any of that stuff I've just said. But if you've got some downtime, maybe now's a good time to set up some social media profiles. Doesn't take long. For pretty much any business, I would recommend Facebook because it's by far the most widely used platform in the UK. And it's also linked to Instagram, which is another widely used platform. If you've got very visual products, again, Instagram can be a great choice. I'm seeing fewer companies using Twitter. I use it personally, but for companies, fewer people use it. But you may want to make sure that you're on as many platforms as possible. But having said that, it's better to do one platform really well than to try and do 4, 5, 6 platforms and do them badly. So it depends how much time you've got at the end of the day. Obviously, there's newfangled things like Snapchat and TikTok and stuff, which have a younger audience overall. You would have to think carefully about whether that's appropriate for your business. But I think if you're not sure, Facebook is the way to go. Yep. That's fine. That's it on social media, I think. So on to SEO. So I'm going to have to speak as if you don't know anything about SEO. So if you do, apologies. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. And it's basically a process where you make changes to your website and you try and get more links to your site. And in so doing, you improve your rankings on search engines. And it works. We do it for clients. If you have a portfolio of keywords, some of them will improve their ranking and some of them won't. But overall, you should see an improvement. It can be a fairly long process. So you can see here, this is an example from one of our clients. They were like position 70 on Google at one point for this particular keyword, which means they're on page 7 or 8. Which no one's going to go that far through the search results to find them. They're now on page 1. So you can see that the graph's wobbled around a bit. It's gone up and down, but it's gone up overall. And they're now on page 1 for that keyword. It's free compared to some of the ads I'm going to talk about in a minute. Obviously, it takes time and you have to know what you're doing to a certain extent. But again, if you're quiet, you could look into it. I'm going to outline a few quick things about it. We always talk about Google. This is why they have 92% of the search market in the UK. You may as well focus your efforts there and hope that the same changes that you've made for Google will also benefit the other search engines. And there are a few parts to it. The first thing to do is make sure you've chosen the correct keywords for your business. So a keyword is something that you want to optimize the site for. And then when someone types that word into Google, when they're doing the search, you want to come up. Now, you need to make sure 2 things. One is there are people actively searching for the thing, because there's no point optimizing for something that no one's searching for. But also that it's an achievable thing that's very relevant to your business. So if you've got a hotel in Birmingham, you might think it'd be great to rank for hotel, but you're never going to, because you can see here there's 2 million people searching for that a month. But you're competing with literally everyone who's a hotel, plus things like booking.com and Travelodge and all those sites, which you're not going to be able to beat because they're big authority sites. Hotel in Birmingham is a bit better. It has fewer searches. Still too competitive in my mind for most people. When you start getting down to things like hotel in Birmingham city centre, boutique hotel in Birmingham is probably the best one here. So you're getting more specific, relevant to your business. There's fewer searches per month, but you've got a better chance of actually ranking for it. And for some niche B2B businesses, having only 10 searches a month for something is fine. If you can convert one of those and it's worth a lot of money to you each month, then that can be worth doing. This data, by the way, is from Google Ads. So if you have a Google Ads profile, you can use the keyword tool in there to see what volumes are. Once you've chosen your keywords, you need to make sure they're in the code of the site. So by that, I mean in the actual page content. But also there's this thing called meta tags. They're in the background of each page of your site. You can usually control them if you log into your admin area and you go to the page. You can usually set what they are. And they're the thing that come up in the search results. Key things here, you want to get your keywords in them, especially in the title. So there's a title and a description, a title tag and a meta description. So the two things, the title's in blue here and the meta description's in gray. You want your keywords in the title. You want some kind of call to action. You want to be selling yourself in the description, but they also need to be the right length. And I've seen a lot of resources online talking about doing the length in characters, like 70 characters for the title, for example. This is why you don't do that. So the top one is 70 I's and the bottom one is 70 W's. But because of the font Google use, an I is a lot skinnier than a W, so it doesn't fit. So that's not a very good method to use. We actually measure them in pixels, which sounds complicated, but all you need to do is, and I can send you a spreadsheet to help you with this. So if anyone's interested, my contact details will be available afterwards. Just bang me an email. I can send you a template. All it is a spreadsheet with the columns set to the right length in pixels. And then if you can type your title or description in the box and it fits in the box, then it's the right length. So it's really simple. So get in touch if you would like that. That's a key part. Another key part of SEO is technical stuff, making sure Google can crawl your site properly, so explore the links on your site properly. That's probably something that your web agency will need to keep an eye on, or your SEO agency, whatever. Something you can do yourself, though, the third part of it that's really important is something called backlinks. So a backlink is a link from your site, a link to your site, sorry, from another website. So if you're putting out press releases and you're getting links back from like newspaper websites and stuff like that, that's really good. If you've never done any work on backlinks before, it's really easy to start by making sure you're on directories like Yelp, Thomson Local, and things like that. Those links don't have much value, but they're better than nothing. Basically, the easier a link is to get, the less useful it is. If you manage to get a link from like Daily Mail or BBC or Telegraph or whatever, that would be really valuable. But the relevance of the link matters as well. So if you already have a relationship with suppliers and stuff like that, or you've done case studies with clients and they would be willing to mention you on their blog and link back to you, using those existing relationships is really useful and a really good way to start getting links through, as well as just sending out PR. If you send out a press release, make sure there's a hyperlink in there to your site, and if they publish it and the link's missing, go back to them and ask them to add it. It's another thing to do. Okay, just a few sections left. I'm going to talk quickly about paid ads. So these are across various platforms. They can be on Google, they can be on Facebook, they can be on other social media, they can be on Bing, for example. Google ads are the main ones we use. And there's different types of ads, which I'll go through in a minute. Which type of ad you use is based on what you're trying to achieve. And also, you might be changing what you're doing now compared to what you usually do because your audience has changed or their habits have changed. If they're not actively buying right now, you might just be reminding them that you exist for when they start buying again. So it might shift towards brand awareness at the moment, and those sorts of ads can be cheaper, and you can keep that rumbling on in the background. And then when people are buying again, you can ramp up your other types of ad. So search ads or text ads on Google are one of the key ones we use. These are the ones where if someone types something into the search, you can come up at the top and it will say ad next to it. These are really powerful because you catch people at the point at which they're actively looking for something. And we find they work incredibly well for the vast, vast majority of our clients. So this is definitely something to consider. But the timing is important. Now might not be the right time to start them if your business isn't selling much in a minute. There's also display ads, which could be images or videos. On Google, Google has something called the Google Network, which has thousands of sites in it, and you can see your ad anywhere on any of those sites. Facebook also have these types of ads, and they appear on Facebook, obviously. And it also links to Instagram, so they could be on Instagram. There's other social platforms that have ads as well. Facebook is the main one we use, LinkedIn sometimes. These are good because they're very cheap generally, and they're good for brand awareness, just reminding people you exist, or getting to the top of that funnel where you get you show someone you exist, and then you might target them again later if they've engaged with your ad and try and shift them down the funnel gradually. These types of ads usually don't convert to sales immediately on their own. So they're a bit more difficult to measure, whereas the search ads, you can link everything up with your Google Analytics, and you can see exactly, even with phone calls, for example, you can see how many inquiries were generated from the ads straight away, what your return on investment is. Shopping ads are another type, which again, they appear in the search results, and they're really good because they show you the price and the image of the product. So if someone clicks on that, you can be pretty sure they're fairly interested. They know what the price is already, and they know what the product looks like. For clothing brands particularly, clothing stores like Pockets and things like that, we find shopping ads are really good. One other thing on paid ads then, make sure if you've got them running, you are at least once a week at the minute, I would say, having a look at what's going on. So this graph at the top, a conversion in this case is something like an inquiry or a sale. You can see that in January, it was a bit quiet because start of January, that's what you expect. February, things were really good. We're getting lots of conversions through. And then all of a sudden, at the end of March, things dried up. And the average cost of a conversion really shot up. And that's purely down to the lockdown situation. If we hadn't been keeping an eye on it, that could have been really bad because we were essentially wasting money and the return on investment had gone completely wrong. So I think for this client, we actually decided to pause the ads for a while. But you need to be reviewing that performance and looking at these sort of important facts and figures. You need to make sure you've got your conversion tracking set up properly on Google Ads. And I've seen a lot of people without that. And they're trying to base performance purely on how many clicks they've got. But that doesn't really mean anything. You can't work out a return on investment based on clicks. You have to do it based on revenue or at least inquiries. So that's something to consider as well. Nearly there. Only a couple of slides on email. At the start of lockdown, there was loads of emails. And I was telling people, be very careful before you even consider sending one. Because it was just a mess. My inbox was filled with the same message 50 times from different people, and it was insane. A lot of people were complaining about it on Twitter, as you can see here. So that's calmed down a bit now. I think now is probably a better time to send email than before. Not that I completely said don't send any, but the advice was more make sure that what you send is different to what everyone else is sending, and only say something if you've got something that's important to say and your audience needs to hear. If you're back open, now is the perfect time to email your your audience and your email list, and let them know if you haven't already. This list will be familiar to you by now. It's another way to communicate all your stuff about opening times and health and safety and offers and blah blah blah. So I won't go through that again, but just remember you need to get the same messages out on all of your channels. And you don't necessarily need a really fancily designed email template, especially if you're sort of a smaller, more local business. I think you can get away with just plain text. If you keep it simple, don't send like reams and reams of paragraphs upon paragraphs of text. I've put this Barack Obama example in because it shows you it is plain text and it's so focused and to the point. And it also has a really good tone of voice that matches who Barack Obama is. So I think that's a really effective email. If you can do something similar to that, that may work for you. If you're bigger, more corporate, you may want something that's a bit fancy, a bit more designed. But keeping it simple and directing people to your site rather than saying everything in the email itself is generally a better strategy. Now is also a good time to build up your email data. If you don't have a pop-up on your site encouraging people to sign up to your newsletter, I strongly recommend that, especially if you're closed at any point. It's a good way of making sure you can keep in touch with these people rather than just coming to your site, realizing you're closed, and then you never hear from them again. You can also segment the data, so you can ask people to give what they're interested in when they're filling in the form. You get that a lot on clothing sites where you have to say if you're interested in male or female clothing, for example, but you can do it for anything. And then you can send targeted emails at those people with the information on that particular subject. Just two other suggestions and then we're done and we'll go to the questions. One is, again, if you've got more time on your hands right now, make sure you have Google Analytics and Google Search Console set up for your website. If you don't know what they are, you will probably need some help from your developer or your digital marketing team to get them sorted out. But basically, Google Analytics gives you all the data on who's visited your website, what pages they visited, you get demographics, you get where they were from, you got how they arrived on your site. You get so much data, which you can use to inform your marketing. Google Search Console is a little bit less well known, I tend to find. It's a bit more techy. That gives you information on what search terms people typed in organically to reach your site, which is something you can't get anywhere else anymore. It used to be available in Analytics, but now it's only available in Search Console. So it's worth having just for that purpose. But it also allows you to do technical stuff like submit site maps and keep an eye on like how Google's crawling your site and things like that, which may be good for your marketing team to have. If you don't have those, really suggest it. And then finally, some other ideas. If you don't have a website at the minute, building a website and getting it done professionally and properly can take quite a while. It can take several weeks, even for a basic site. And we actually we're doing a lot of Magento e-commerce websites at the minute, and if they've got lots of integrations in them, those can take sort of 12 weeks to do, something like that. But if you don't have the money or you don't want to wait that long, there's loads of platforms where you can get up and selling stuff straight away. eBay, Amazon. If you do handmade or vintage stuff, Etsy is good. There's loads of other examples out there as well. This is just a few. Obviously, Amazon and eBay have a massive audience already. So whereas if you built your website, you might have to wait for the audience to build up and for people to start finding you, and you'd have to do Google ads probably and a bit of SEO to get traffic to it. With Amazon and eBay, that traffic's already there. Obviously, the downside is you're paying loads of fees to those places. So you probably want your own website in the medium to long term, but if you want to just get selling straight away, then you can do that. That's it. That's the end of what I've got to say. I know there's going to be a few questions, so I think James is going to look through those and we'll try and answer them as best we can.
Russell, for that. I hope everyone took a little bit away from that. There's a lot of content there. So yeah, thank you so much. Just very quickly, we have a few questions in the chat box. Firstly, from Joe Jones, for B2B and digital content, how much posting is too much, or is there a case of see what works? There are no rules right now.
Ooh, interesting question. It's very difficult to put an exact number on it. It does depend on your business. I'd probably say B2B, you should post maybe a little bit less than B2C. And it also depends what we're talking about. So if we're talking about posting blog posts, for example, for a B2B company, I'd say 1 or 2 a month is probably fine. But if we're talking about social media posting, obviously you'd be posting a lot more often. For B2C, it could be as much as a couple of times a day on social media. But for B2B, you might be posting maybe a few times a week, maybe up to once a day if you really want to go for it. But it's better to post less and have better quality than it is to just go for it. So it's the quality over quantity thing, really. Post as often as you think it warrants it based on the quality of the stuff you want to get across. If that means posting only a couple of times a month, so be it. And it's gonna be really personal, vary based on what your audience is and what you want to get out there.
Brilliant, thank you. From Richard, what would you recommend for somebody who is starting up in marketing communications? Where to start and how to go about it?
Not quite sure what you mean. Do you mean you're looking to pursue as a career?
Oh gosh. Rich is typing now. We'll see in a minute.
We'll see.
Career,
yeah. So the good thing about marketing is you can get into it from loads of different angles, and especially with the digital side of it. The job I'm doing now didn't exist when I was at school, for example. I was actually a history teacher for a few years, and then I moved halfway across the country, and I didn't really know what to do, and I got into copywriting and stuff, and then from there I moved into digital marketing. So there are various ways to do it, but if you're doing it now, obviously there are degrees you can get in marketing and business and even digital marketing. There are apprenticeships. I don't know how old you are, Richard, sorry. But if you've got experience already in a different industry, transferable skills are really important in marketing as well. I find in my job I use skills like communicating with clients. I use skills like problem solving, being able to analyze data. All those things are pretty transferable. If you're already in another job, there's a lot of material online where you can teach yourself things and put them on your CV. So, for example, Google Ads have a certification program. So they have loads of resources online where you can learn, and then there's an exam at the end, and then you can say that you're Google Ads certified in particular things, and you can add that to your CV. So yeah, there's loads of options. I know recruiting for my team at Clear, we do look for people with relevant experience, but that relevant experience is sometimes from outside the industry. So we've hired people who are recruitment consultants before because they had the people skills we needed. We've hired people straight out of university before. We've hired people who have had Google Ads qualifications and stuff like that. And we've hired people with marketing degrees, and we've hired people with business degrees. So it could be any of those things. There's no one path. So sorry if that doesn't quite. Hopefully that's in some way useful.
Okay, we've got one from Louise. Any advice on the best way for marketing emails, as I've been researching a lot and confused as to what email strategy for new customers?
New customers. So there's a tricky thing with email. There's two strands. Mainly within our GDPR world, we're communicating with existing customers via email. It can be very difficult to get the email addresses to do more than that. And I know there are some There are some exceptions to GDPR where it's business to business and there's an official business case for communicating with someone. So I'm not a lawyer, so I can't comment on that too much. But it can be difficult. You don't really want to be spamming people you don't know with emails. In a previous job, it was done for some clients. This was at a different agency, I name no names, where they bought loads of emails. This was before GDPR, to be fair, although it was still pretty spammy. If you're buying email addresses and sending people emails, I don't really recommend that. You could get your email domain blacklisted and not be able to send any emails from it, for example. So just be very careful. I would go more the strategy of get something on your website where you have a newsletter pop up and then use your emails to communicate and keep in touch with your existing audience.
If just to add to that, maybe just talk about Facebook ads as well for lead generation. They're a fantastic way of kind of capturing your audience because you're sending ads to your ideal customers essentially, and through lead gen ads you'll be able to get their information because they've literally given it to you and they know that they're interested in what you're posting as well. So yeah, that's maybe another route. And just very quickly from Paul Holding, what tips do you have for choosing keywords if you're unsure what people will be searching for?
This can be tricky depending on your business. For some businesses, it's super easy to choose the keywords because it's just the names of your products. For other businesses, it can be very difficult to work out what people are looking for. One thing to do is look at your competitors' websites and see what phrases they're using on their website. Build up a list of those phrases and then run those phrases through a keyword tool like Google Keyword Planner or Moz or whatever you've got. The other thing you can do is ask your existing customers or ask people who get in touch with you. If you've got some really friendly existing customers, ask them what they would type. Also, if you've already got a website up and running and you've got something like Google Search Console, you can use that to see what people are typing in already and finding you. And it'll show you what position you rank for those terms as well on average. And if the position's quite low, but people are using the search term, then maybe you add that to your list and try and improve the ranking for that particular term. So there's a few different things you can do.
Brilliant. Well, I think we'll wrap up there. I just want to say another big thank you to you, Russell. That's some excellent content there. And yeah, we'll send out a recording of this webinar and also Russell's contact information if you have any more questions or if you'd like to ask anything else. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And
yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you all again very soon.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Thanks all.